Welcome to the Align and Abide podcast with Dr. Kim Tran, where we help you achieve your greatest God-given potential. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey, it's Dr. Kim Tran here, and I host the Align and Abide podcast, where we explore ways to elevate your life through holistic health, wellness, personal development, and entrepreneurship. Together, we'll uncover how you can invest in your greatest asset, your health, and achieve your God-given potential. This episode is brought to you by Minnesota Family Chiropractic, a Christian chiropractic and integrative health practice, founded and led by Dr. Kim Tran, dedicated to helping patients find lasting relief and vibrant health through chiropractic care, acupuncture, nutrition, functional medicine, and inner healing. Minnesota Family Chiropractic is on a mission to transform lives physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Our team of doctors focuses on whole person care to address the root causes, not just the symptoms, and you can get back to living fully. Ready to start your path towards better health? Give us a call today at 612-545-5672 or find me online at drkimtran.com. Now, today I've got a special guest on today, introduced by my office manager, Joanna, because Joanna had actually worked at a different chiropractic office and had the pleasure of knowing Christy Thorson of Bradshaw Bryant. So Christy is one of my greatest referral partners for anybody who's ever been through any auto accidents or personal injuries. And she's actually been doing this for over 17 years. So just imagine she's not fresh out of school anymore, and an amazing partner at her law firm as well. So Christy, I'm so glad you're here this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I think it's so important to just understand a little bit of your background. Like, what even made you decide to become a lawyer?
It is something that I always wanted to do. I am the first attorney in my family, so I'm not sure exactly where the influence came from, but I have always enjoyed anything legal related, and I definitely made the right choice because I love what I do.
That's great. Do you have like other important mentors that you've had along the way that really developed you as you became an attorney?
Before I got into the personal injury field, I was working through school. I was working at Excel Energy, and I had an attorney in their legal office that I went to with questions all the time. And we did lunches periodically, and she really helped me get through school. And then once I got out and started practicing, my employers have been great mentors, especially my current employer at Bradshaw Bryant. I have learned amazing things about doing personal injury cases, getting ready for trial when necessary, and just really advocating for clients.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know I talk to my patients a lot about this too, is that many times they'll get into an auto accident and they're thinking, well, doc, I don't need a lawyer. And I said, it's not because you need one, but it will make things so much easier for you, because many times you don't realize is once you get into an auto accident, or the insurance company, they're going to call and bug you, because they know if they keep calling and bugging you, they'll wear you down so you'll stop getting care. That's the insurance company's goal, right? And you can speak more on this, Christy, is to make sure they pay out as little as possible. Right.
That is exactly right. The insurance company is not on your side, regardless of what any of their slogans are. They're not your friend. They're not your neighbor. They are businesses, and their job is to make money, and they will do whatever they can to avoid paying bills. If it's your own insurance company, they will try to cut off your benefits, even if you still need them. If it is the at-fault driver's insurance company, they will try to offer you a very low settlement to see if you'll accept it and walk away and get less than you deserve.
And if you're not aware of that, And especially if you are younger, they will try to settle you out a lot faster. Or if perhaps English is not your first language, oh yes, they will work so hard to get you cut off so quickly.
Exactly. Yes.
And this is why I think it's important for anyone who's been through an auto accident to actually get a lawyer. And this is coming from somebody who's been into an auto accident myself, right? And there are things that we're going to explain today of, well, what should you know before you even get into an auto accident? What happens if you do get into an auto accident, and why you need somebody like Christy on your side? Because, and one of the most important things I want people to know is, if you are saying, hey, you know what, I really need a lawyer, let me reach out to Christy, it does not cost you anything.
That is exactly right. Personal injury attorneys work on what is called a contingency basis. And I'm sure you've heard it in commercials that we don't get paid unless you get paid. Mm-hmm. So we get paid out of the settlements that we get from the at-fault parties. If we don't get a settlement, we don't get paid. And so what that means is we won't take your case unless we think it is a good case, unless we think we have a chance of getting recovery for you. Mm-hmm. Because if we get a recovery for you, then we get a recovery too.
Yeah, which is important, right? And I think that most people, once they start to understand it and how much better they can actually focus on their own healing. And I've had patients who I've referred out, and I said, didn't you get in contact with a lawyer? I know you talked to them. And they're like, oh no, like, I could do it on my own. And then I get to hear them, oh my gosh, Dr. Kim, they just keep calling me. They keep calling. And I'm like, didn't you reach out to the lawyer? I thought we had gotten that all settled. And they're like, no. Oh. And I was like, because guess who fields all those calls for you? Attorneys like Christy, right? They get to field all those calls, and you get to focus on your healing. Because I'm going to tell you, most of my patients who come in from auto accidents, they don't have the bandwidth to manage those calls. Your brain gets fried from your injuries. Most people are dealing with a concussion. Even if they don't realize it's a concussion, they start not being able to sleep really well. They get fatigued. They've got chronic injuries. And so having somebody else to advocate for you is so important. And I want you to think about that instead of just thinking, oh, okay, yeah, this attorney is about a lawsuit. It's really about advocating for you to get what you need.
That's exactly right. And it's advocating for you, but it's also, we are there to help our clients, help them understand the process, understand what their benefits are. I learned at a pretty early age when I first started driving, in fact, how the whole process worked, because I was in a number of fender benders when I was a teenager. And I have an uncle who was an agent for American Family. And so I would talk to him anytime I had questions. He would help me fill out paperwork for the crashes that I was in. And so I learned how things work and what the paperwork looks like. And it's only gotten more complicated as the years go by. And so it's important to have an attorney who understands this process to help you through it and to be the go-between so we can relay what the insurance company needs to know to pay your bills, pay your wage loss, pay mileage, and pay you a settlement that is fair.
If you've been through any auto accident or personal injury and you're looking for advice, you're looking to see where the next thing you can go to, you can actually find her at minnesotapersonalinjury.com. That's minnesotapersonalinjury.com. Now, for many of you, when it comes to deciding on what you should get for your insurance coverage, that decision could, in a serious auto accident, make or break what you get for care. And this is really important to find out between Now, Christy, we were talking about this a little bit before we started, the difference between comprehensive coverage versus liability.
There's no fault coverage and there's liability coverage. So no fault is the coverage on your own policy that protects you. So no fault pays medical bills, and that is for any type of medical treatment that you need. If you have broken bones, need to go to the emergency room, that covers that. If you want to go see a chiropractor like Dr. Tran and get more of a holistic type of care, that is covered. If you want acupuncture, if you get referrals for pain management, if you get referrals for scans, that is all under the medical part of your policy. There is also no fault provides coverage for wage loss. If you have to miss time from work because of the crash, also mileage for driving to appointments, you get reimbursed for that. And then there is also a part, it's the economic side, that is for some policies call it replacement services, but it is if you need somebody to help you around your home to do things that you're not able to do while you are recovering. And that is no fault. And your insurance provides that regardless of who causes a crash. Liability, on the other hand, is the coverage of the other driver. And that provides a settlement to you once we're ready to negotiate that. And then also the at-fault driver's insurance is the one that takes care of your vehicle, either repairing it or paying you if the car is a total loss.
Yeah, which is pretty big. So what would you recommend for people if they're looking for insurance coverage? What would you tell them to get?
So what I say is get as much as you can afford, because your insurance protects you if you're in a crash. So if you're in a crash with a driver that does not have insurance, your own insurance steps into the place of the at-fault driver. And so if you don't have a decent amount of coverage, you could find yourself in a lot of trouble. And also, if the other driver has minimal coverage. In Minnesota, the minimum amount of coverage is $30,000 per person, $60,000 per crash. So that's not a lot of coverage nowadays. So having extra coverage on your own policy, you can get that additional coverage to compensate for the small amount that you'd be getting from the other driver's policy. Another thing that I would like to point out too is if you have multiple vehicles, check your policy to see if you have stacking. What that means is you can multiply the amount of coverage you have by the number of vehicles that you have. So, for example, if you have one vehicle, the minimum amount of no-fault coverage that you have is $20,000 medical, $20,000 economic. If you have 3 vehicles and stack them together, you have $60,000 in medical coverage and $60,000 in economic coverage. That's a big difference for not a big change in your premium. So check your policies, see what you have, and adjust as much as you can.
Which is really important. I find that most people find out after the fact of how little or coverage they may have. And sometimes when you're thinking that it's easier to go cheaper, it doesn't actually cost you that much to make sure you have all the comprehensive coverage on your vehicle with a no fault. And especially in Minnesota, for many of you who don't realize this, like Minnesota is a no fault state. And that means that even if you go through an auto accident, your bills actually will first get submitted to your own insurance company, which is important for people to know because many times they're like, well, you don't need mine, but you still have to make a claim through your own first before they go through and get the reimbursement from the other side.
And that's important to remember too, because the auto insurance is primary if you're in a crash. And so it's helpful to have as much coverage as you can, because that way you can avoid deductibles or copays that you might have with your health insurance, because health insurance will kick in after you've exhausted your no-fault benefits.
Well, and I think this is important for many of you to be aware of, because there is something new that's been happening, and some of you are aware of it. Some of we think about it as the passive aggressive drivers, but there are actually drivers now that are purposely causing auto accidents. So I was talking to one of my other patients. She had just left my office from her chiropractic care, and she was driving. She always gives herself at least 3 lanes. Sorry, not 3 lanes, 3 car lengths between drivers, because she just knows she doesn't want to get into an accident. She's being aware, she was being safe, and somebody sped up in front of her and slammed down on his brakes, and she ran right into him. And I just want you to realize is that whether it is people that are behind on their payment, they're trying to cause accidents, which, I mean, after seeing patients who have come in after auto accidents, I don't know why you would ever want to do this to yourself. And Christy, I'm sure you have a bit more of an insight with some of the stuff that's been happening with some of these auto accidents that have been occurring.
Right. And so a couple points on that is, if you're in a crash that is your fault for any reason, you still have that coverage on your auto policy to go get care, and your auto policy will pay for that care. If you're in a situation where it's not your fault, one thing to think about too is having a dash cam to record that. The next thing too, if you don't have that, call the police immediately and tell them what happened. And they can investigate, and they can look at what happened. They can possibly get more information from the other driver to show that they were the one that caused this.
Well, and I think it's so important because, you know, a mistake that one of our patients made was he was in an auto accident like that where it was a hit and run. So he got hit on the freeway. And the most important thing that you need to do, if somebody hits you and they take off, you want to stop right then and there, obviously pull off to the side of the road, but you want to call the police as soon as possible. Now, what the insurance company will do is if you do not call the police and report it right then and there, they will use that against you if you try to report it later. And the reason why is they will say, well, what if you were on drugs? What if you were on alcohol? And they have no way of proving otherwise. And I want you to realize that is for your own safety, you always want to call the police first. And because we had that instance where they didn't report it right away until after the 24-hour period hit, and the insurance company actually used that against him, even though it wasn't his fault.
Right. Right. Anytime you're in a crash, whether it is a hit and run or if the other party is still there, call the police immediately. So for one thing, everything is fresh in your mind. All the details of what happened are fresh in your mind, and you can explain what happened, and the police officer will write a report. But also, there can be an investigation. If it's a hit and run, you can describe the vehicle, and there's a chance that the police could locate that vehicle.
Well, and I think it's also important is please don't take it for granted that that person is going to be honest about taking responsibility. They might say it to you. They're like, oh no, we don't need to involve police. You know, it was my fault. If you do not have that, I've had it where people got turned around and the person, because they had their handshake agreement, that person ended up turning around and saying, oh, that person rammed into me. And that's what they reported to their insurance company. and that becomes a big liability. So you want to protect yourself. It does not matter. You don't know this person, and understand that, yes, we want to trust people. But there's a reason why we want to involve the police in these matters, not only to protect yourself. Right. And
yes.
So, for those things that are, and I know that there's a lot of things out there where you're like, oh gosh, but I don't want to make it that much of a big of a deal. It is to protect you, because any time that you don't call the police, and as Christy and I have talked about, that if you don't call the police, the insurance company actually uses that against you.
Yes.
And that's not the situation you want to be in. Coming up, we're going to be talking about some other cases as far as, okay, what else can you do? What is available to you long term, just in case you are injured into an auto accident, and how important it is to actually choose the right provider, the right attorney, and knowing who to choose. Coming up, and you can find out more information at drkimtran.com. That's drkimtran.com. Christy and I have worked together with so many patients to make sure that they get the care that they need. And I think that this is really important for people to understand is an attorney is always going to be your advocate, and you want to make sure to choose the right attorney. I had a patient recently who then involved his niece and his sister with the same law firm that he found on TikTok. Not to say, I'm sure, Christy, you're posting videos on TikTok maybe, but you want to be aware that maybe it's not the fanciest law firm. They were actually out of Florida, and originally they wanted a quick settlement. So the first case, they actually called us in and said, hey, are you bilingual practice? We got them in right away. And then they realized, oh, you're not quick to finish billing out their case. And they figured that out because for someone else who's been through an auto accident, and Attorney Christy and I were talking about this too, is that you want to be careful about where you choose to go for your stuff, because now some of the hospitals have even learned, well, if you have $20,000 to advocate toward your case, if you go to an ER, by the way, they can easily burn out over $20,000 in care in one visit. Or there's practices out there that will burn out over $500 plus per visit that you'll be out of care within a month. And I just want you to realize is that doesn't serve you That doesn't serve you. When I was in my auto accident, it actually took me over a year to actually recover fully. And so for me, it's very important to make sure that we are being conservative about how much we bill out. So even though we're giving patients a lot during their care, we only bill out part of that. And a lot of that is, for me, I want to make sure that patients are getting fully healed over. And that's important. Now, Christy, you've seen this with other people. They chose the wrong attorney. What are some signs that they would know that they chose the wrong attorney to begin with?
Well, the biggest sign would be that they're not familiar with the no-fault policy, no-fault coverages that you have available to you. Not every attorney is versed in every type of law. You want to have a law firm that is familiar with personal injury, that is familiar with the laws, familiar with what your benefits are, what your rights are, because you want somebody that can advocate for you, that understands your situation, that can relay your case to the insurance company properly so bills get paid, so you get a proper settlement. You don't want to have an attorney that specializes in something else handle your case, because you don't want things to get missed. You don't want mistakes to happen when you're dealing with something as important as your recovery from a car crash.
Yep. I actually have a patient who, as a teenager, their family had decided that they would go with the attorney they knew, but that was actually an attorney that did not specialize in personal injury. And unfortunately, that case went to trial, and she still feels a way about it 20 years later because the insurance company they have great lawyers on their side too. So you have to understand is if you hire somebody else who does not know personal injury, they will tear that person apart. And, by the way, when we talk about trials, the majority of cases will never see trial, by the way.
Exactly.
Very few and far between.
That is exactly right. Very few cases even have to get started into a lawsuit process. And the only way that happens is if we come to an impasse with the adjuster that we're dealing with. And so we can start a lawsuit that just gets an attorney involved on the insurance company's side, and the attorney will then review the case, and that is the person that I'm dealing with going forward. Just because a lawsuit gets started does not mean it is affecting the other party directly. We are dealing with the insurance company. And once we get into a lawsuit, there are so many different steps. There are questionnaires that need to get answered in writing called interrogatories. There are depositions where you're in person or by Zoom nowadays answering questions from the attorney. And then there is mediation, which is essentially a settlement conference to try to get the case resolved. So there are many opportunities along the way to get the case settled without actually getting into a courtroom.
And I want people to understand that, because I know many of my patients will be like, oh, I'm not here to try to cause a lawsuit or things like that. And I just want you to understand is, attorneys like Christy, they're here to advocate for you. They're here to answer the questions for the insurance company. So you can just focus on getting the care that you need, and they make sure that your bills are paid, which might mean another that I would tell you when it comes to an attorney is if they want to send you right away to a pain management clinic, that's a big problem. And the reason why I say that is, so I had recently a mother and daughter who got into an auto accident, back in August. Well, they got their fancy, TikTok 10X lawyer, and they sent them to a pain management clinic. So by the way, they actually did if you go to a clinic and they just want to do your call over Zoom for auto accident injuries, you need to walk away. Don't even go on the call, because you're missing the whole thing. I think about how much we deal with that my team knows there's a lot of paperwork that needs to get managed properly, because the insurance company looks at every single thing that a doctor files. So we are so thorough with our paperwork, and I apologize with people profusely about it. And I said, but this is how we win cases for you. This is how we get all the care that you need, because the doctor has to be very thorough, meaning we'll go through, test all your nerve senses, your orthopedics. We look at your posture. We look at your range of motion. We look at your oxygen levels. How's your blood flow? We look at all of your x-rays, because we take them in our office. And we also send people out for MRIs as well if needed. So it's not that we won't partner, but what happens is if you don't have somebody else who's dictating every single problem that you have and looking at where's your sensation, where's your nerves, how's your concussion healing, because there's not a medication out there that's going to heal your concussion, by the way. There's not a medication out there that is going to heal your, sprain strain of your tissues in your neck and your back. And it's so unfortunate, because they actually got sent to a pain clinic, and lo and behold, not even before they even had a single amount of treatment. So they got a whole list of medications, both of them, yet they were in so much pain. They had problems doing their jobs They didn't advocate for them to tell them, by the way, you can get reimbursed for your mileage for driving to the clinic. You can get this other type of care. And so the insurance company had already started to file for what they call an independent medical exam. And I want you to realize this. It sounds like a scary term, but what the insurance company will do is they want to see, okay, are you making up the injuries, or do we need to involve somebody else because you didn't have proper treatment? And this is really important to know.
Right. So just backing up a little bit, you're talking about documentation. That's important when you are meeting with an attorney for the first time. You want to be face to face with that attorney because you want the attorney to see you, to understand you, but also you want to see the attorney, see if they're going to be a good fit for you. You don't want to meet somebody by Zoom or by email. We don't do that. We'll have you come to our office, or we will come to you to meet with you. We will meet with you in the chiropractor's office if you're comfortable with that, if that's what you want to do. Going into the independent medical examination, independent is not a good word.
Yeah, it's your insurance medical exam.
Exactly. We use adverse medical examination because the doctor is hired by the insurance company. The doctor works for the insurance company. Most of the time, they don't even have their own patients. They make millions of dollars a year working for the insurance company. They're going to write a report that says you're fine, you don't need any more treatment, you were healed within 6 to 8 weeks, regardless of what your injuries are, because that's what the insurance company wants them to say. And if they want to keep working, keep getting that massive paycheck from the insurance company, they're going to keep writing those reports.
And I think that's an important part is we actually prep our patients before they go through any of those exams. And not your attorney should prep you for those, and your doctor should also prep you for those too as well, because I want people to know in full confidence that we're there supporting them in the background, that we're always advocating for them, what their current injuries are. And I tell people, you need to tell them everything. And if you don't understand, especially if English is not your first language, you need to let them know. And coming up, we're going to be also talking about what other things you should look for when it comes to care, when it comes to your attorneys. And if you're looking for more information on Christy, you can go to minnesotapersonalinjury.com. As we were talking about before, it is so important, if you've been into an auto accident, reach out to an attorney like Christy who knows personal injury, knows the game that the insurance companies play, right, Christy?
Absolutely. They will do everything they can to avoid paying bills, to avoid paying a settlement to you, to minimize the extent of your injuries.
Well, and I know we talk about this a lot as far as it's so important to choose the right attorney, but also choose the right place that you go to for care. Now, here's a few things that, we would agree that you should look out for. Now, yes, of course, if you do have a fracture, if you have something impaled into you, please go to the emergency room. Okay. Now, if you are able to walk off from an auto accident, I do recommend that you get checked out by a chiropractor who does x-rays within 24 hours. And you may not want that. You may not feel like it. You may not want anybody to touch you, but it's so important that regardless of how you are feeling in that moment, to get checked out within 24 hours. Now, and it's because your adrenaline kicks in. And so you're thinking, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Well, that's what the insurance company is vibing off of, right, Christy?
Exactly.
They're hoping, yeah. Right? Because your adrenaline kicks in. Do you know how many times they'll call you right away, right after an auto accident?
Absolutely. And yes, they will push you for a quick settlement. They will push you to not go to a doctor. If you don't go to an emergency room, they will automatically assume that you're fine. and just trying to get the case settled and out the door.
Mm-hmm. And it's important for people to realize is that after an auto accident, you're of course in that mode where I was just talking to somebody else. They got into an auto accident earlier this year. And he's like, yeah, they went to go check out my baby and I was okay. And I said, you weren't okay. Your stuff that you have now are from that accident. It's just you thought more about your baby, which is okay, right? It's important to know you got your baby checked out first. And just in case they go through and just check out, speaking of babies, if you're in an auto accident with the car seats, guess what? They are no longer viable.
Right. And it's important to contact the insurance company or let your attorney know that you had car seats involved, because the insurance company of the at-fault driver is required to reimburse you for those car seats so you can buy new ones.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to get your kids care because they can't always advocate for themselves or they don't understand what pain feels like. They might become more grouchy. They might feel more fatigued. You might find that they might start having some more temper tantrums afterwards, or they might become a little bit more clumsy after an auto accident. And that's your sign that it's so important to find a chiropractor that will also take x-rays of your kids, by the way. And I know you're thinking, oh dear, but it's so important because you have no idea what happens during that. And I had a patient who got into an auto accident over 3 years ago. And she ended up in hospital. And thank goodness I saw her for just like 1 or 2 visits. And I'm like, what in the world happened to her? And we were calling. She ended up being hospitalized and had a fracture in her back. And on top of it, had a concussion. So imagine this, 3 years later, she was still suffering from the same problems. And the insurance company was trying to blame it on COVID or because she ended up getting really sick in the hospital. And I want you to be aware of this. And Christy, you know some of these more complicated cases as well, that you can still get care after that time frame, but you need somebody else to advocate for you during that time, of course.
Absolutely. And what Dr. Tran was saying is absolutely right about getting care immediately after the crash for a couple of reasons. You want everything to be documented as you're progressing through your healing. You might not feel any pain right away with the adrenaline and everything else, but you want to still get checked out. And that way, as things are progressing, tell your doctor, your chiropractor, what is going on with your body so they can properly care for you. They can set up a treatment plan that will help you to get better. We want you to get back to the condition you were in before this crash ever happened. And that's important from my perspective as well, because that documentation shows your injuries. Most of the time, unless you have broken bones or bleeding, you can't see what your injury is. And so it's important to have medical documentation showing these are all my injuries. This is everything that's being done to help me heal from these injuries.
And it's important that they take imaging. For a doctor that I've advocated for patients, I've written medical reports for, especially when it comes to cases. And sometimes I'm not their first one. And the one thing that made a big difference was the fact that they had x-rays, they've had MRIs. And it's not to say you need all of those, but you do need at least x-rays. And we do special like flexion extension ones, so I can actually see where you have ligament damage, where things are slipping and moving in your spine as well. But we also want to know if we need to do more imaging. But what has happened is sometimes patients will come in, they've gone to a place that didn't take any imaging, and I'm like, ooh, that is a really difficult case to transition on. And the reason why is the insurance company knows the less things that you've had done, if you didn't have the x-rays, if you didn't have MRIs, or if you didn't have any of that imaging, they actually will use that against you to actually get less in care. And so it's important to choose a provider that does those things.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Now, and, as Christy and I would tell you as well, that in the beginning, your pain levels might be low just because you're on that adrenaline, but over the next couple of weeks to a couple of months, your pain levels will vary. And that is an important thing to know. So you want to be careful to not settle with any insurance company or have them close your case right away.
Absolutely. And that's another reason too, to tell your doctor what is happening with you. Your doctor, your chiropractor, like Dr. Tran here, will ask you how you've been feeling, how your pain's been fluctuating, what's it like when it's at its highest, what it's at when it's at its lowest, how the pain is, if it's shooting, stabbing, burning, because that way she can set up a treatment plan that will work for you. And also, I can explain to the insurance company what is going on and why they have to pay what I think they should pay for your case.
Mm-hmm. Now, Attorney Christy, what else would you say to people who are looking for somebody like you? How would they best contact you? What's the information that they need to have?
So you can just go to minnesotapersonalinjury.com. That is our website that will get you connected. We have people on our website. There's a form you can fill out. They will contact us directly. Our phone number is on there. You can call and you would be able to speak to an attorney, either myself or one of the other attorneys in my office immediately. And we can set up an appointment to meet with you. Consultation is free, and so we can talk to you about your case, what's been going on. We can explain to you what your rights are, what we can do to help you. And then if you want to proceed, then we would go forward and have you sign the appropriate forms, and we would start working on your case.
Mm-hmm. And remember, if you've been through an auto accident, it actually doesn't cost you anything. And I know it sounds like a commercial, right? They don't get paid unless you get paid, but that's actually the truth, right, Christy?
That's exactly right. There's nothing out of pocket at any time for us to represent you. The way we get paid is out of the settlement we get from the at-fault driver. And so, like I mentioned before, we will take your case if we think it is a good case, because if we get a recovery for you, then we get our fee as well. Mm-hmm. But there is no fee if we do not get a recovery for you.
Mm-hmm. And they will let you know. The one thing about, Christy and our team is they're so thorough. You're going to get all the information you need, and you're going to feel that you are being advocated for, that you can actually just be able to relax and take care of yourself. And if you're looking for more information, and again, Attorney Christy Thorson of Bradshaw and Bryant, I am so glad that you got on today, and you can find her at minnesotapersonalinjury.com. That's minnesotapersonalinjury.com.
Thanks for listening to the Align and Abide podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.